Hello, my name is Omar Rabasad. It's Sunday, April 14, 2019 at 2:53 p.m. So I just want to continue reading the review of the Bernardo's case. This is part two, and this report was done by Mr. Justice Archie Campbell. And I posted this link on my Twitter account. And when I read it, there were so many inconsistencies pointed out in the report that um, I personally suspect that there is another underlying reason here that gave rise to so many inconsistencies. Things that Too many things fell into that black hole, as was referred to in the review. Um, it's just so many failures to communicate and to put things together and to do things right, to follow procedure, and just to create cracks, not probably not deliberately, but cracks, I should say, cracks were created in which things can fall through into this black hole. And in my Twitter account, I suggested some reasons that this could have taken place, and so systemically, um, you know, throughout the three regions that these crimes were committed. It could very well be that there were other reasons. So this is chapter 6 of the review. Bernardo was a predator who stalked his victims, and it's on stalking. After he stalked and raped the young women in Scarborough between 1988 and 1990, and after he stalked and raped a young woman in Henley Island on April 6, 1991, and after he stalked and raped and murdered Leslie Mahaffey in June of 1991, he stalked and terrified a number of young women in St. Catharines in the summer of 1991 and the spring of 1992, before he stalked and raped and murdered Kristen French. I'm going to say that again. After he stalked and raped the young women in Scarborough between 1988 and 1990, and after he stalked and raped a young woman on Henley Island on April 6, 1991, and after he stalked and raped and murdered Leslie Mahaffey in June of 1991, he stalked and terrified a number of young women in St. Catharines in the summer of 1991 and the spring of 1992, before he stalked and raped and murdered Kristen French. Stalking was a hallmark of his method. The young women he stalked in St. Catharines took the initiative to report Bernardo's stalking to the police, NRPS, the Niagara Police. Regrettably, the police did not take Bernardo's stalking seriously. To me, this is unbelievable, beyond unbelievable. Stalking was a hallmark of his method to repeat. The young women he stalked in St. Catharines took the initiative to report Bernardo's stalking to the NRPS, the police. Regrettably, the police did not take Bernardo's stalking seriously. There was no investigative follow-up. There was no investigative follow-up. The police information and Bernardo's stalking was not properly reported and not properly organized and retrieved. There was no follow-up. There was improper documentation. So to repeat again, the police information about Bernardo's stalking was not properly reported and not properly organized and not retrieved, although it was potentially significant to the investigations of the murders of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French. It was not retrieved in the investigations of these two women's murder, rape and murder. One of the young women recited, that's saw again, R-A-S-I-G-H-T-D, recited, Bernardo in his car on April 18th when Kristen French was being held captive, and reported it to the Niagara Regional Police, although she was not able to get the correct license number, and the police took no notice of a follow-up report. He was holding Kristen French at the time. The question whether Kristen French would be alive if the stalking incident had been followed up is unanswerable. To a lot of people, it may be answerable. The most significant problems were that the officer who investigated Bernardo's case, the most significant problems were that the officer who investigated Bernardo as the August 1991 stalker did not report the incident. He investigated it and did not report it. And that the reciting of Bernardo on April 18, 1992 was apparently not taken seriously when the call was received by the police. Was not taken seriously. Underlying those problems was the more fundamental problem that stalking, until recently, was not taken very seriously either by the police or by the public. Well, I disagree with that. I think the public takes stalking seriously and always have. So I'll just disagree with that. Although stalking is now taken more seriously, I think it was never taken seriously by the police. Although stalking is now taken more seriously, and it is increasingly recognized as one of the hallmarks of a serial predator, much remains to be done by the way of police training and by way of raising public consciousness about its seriousness. So again, I'm going to disagree with that. I think there is definitely awareness in the public and concern. I do agree with the comment that the police needs to be trained and become more sensitive. They still do not take stalking seriously, in my personal experience. It is questionable, having regard to the wording of the Criminal Code Stalking Amendment, that it is restrictive judicial interpretation. Whether Bernardo's stalking of the young women in St. Catherine would be caught by the Criminal Code Stalking Amendment, although the judicial interpretation of those provisions is not yet completely settled. Okay, so there seemed to be some sort of a interpretation issue of what's written and how it's written in the Criminal Code. To me, this is my humble opinion, muddying the waters. Having noted, I'm not saying that this review is muddying the waters in any way, but I'm finding that when it points out something, it's giving a reason why it may or may not have happened. So, it's going both ways. Having noted the underlying reasons why Bernardo's stalking of the young women in St. Catharines was not taken seriously by the NRPS, And having noted that there have been general improvements in police response to stalking since then, it remains to be said that the Niagara Region Police Service should have been more responsive to Bernardo's stalking of the young women in St. Catharines in the summer of 1991 and the spring of 1992, and to his reciting in April 18, 1992. The incidents themselves deserved more attention because of the justified fear of the victims and the inherent danger implicit in the stalking. The incidents deserved even more attention at the time when the local police force was looking for Leslie Mahaffey's killer, just 4 months after a vicious stalking rape a few miles away on Henley Island. Although it is impossible to calculate the impact upon the Bernardo's investigation of this lack of attention, let me say that again. Although it is impossible to calculate the impact upon the Bernardo investigations of this lack of attention, it is obvious that the information would have been of interest to the GRT investigations, because that's the Greater Toronto Area investigations, because that was the very kind of information they had tried to obtain from the Niagara Regional Police Service. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So there, it just goes on and on about this black hole, quote unquote. There is another discrepancy, quote unquote, that kind of hit a nerve with me. The identification, arrest, and questioning. Despite some thoughtful planning, the arrest and questioning of Bernardo was a mess from the beginning to the end, because there was no effective cooperation between Metro and the GRT, because Metro officers were operating on their own private agenda, and because no one was in charge and no one was accountable. Although it was planned to give the accused a phone call to his lawyer immediately after arrest, this was not done. Not only was it not done, but this crucial information was not conveyed to the interview team. The interview team of Detective Irwin from Metro and Detective Bilou from GRT, hope I pronounced that right, was inadequately prepared. Although Bilou tried to meet with Irwin to work out a team strategy for the team interview, Irwin had no time because he had been assigned to the search warrant preparation, and his senior officers did not ensure that he was given time for joint preparation with Bilou. Although his ranking officer, Staff Inspector Marrier, did not ensure that Irwin consulted with Bilou, he did ensure that Irwin took private direction and strategic advice about the conduct of the interview from other Metro officers, strategies and advice which Irwin did not disclose to Bilou. The Metro officers, unknown to the GRT, proceeded with their own private agenda. Let me say that again. The Metro officers, unknown to the GRT, proceeded with their own private agenda. This reflects an astounding and dangerous lack of cooperation between police forces. So far as the interview itself was concerned, the plan was for Bellew to start out by questioning Bernardo about the murders and then for Irwin to question him about the rapes. Irwin apparently acted on his own agenda, suddenly and without warning, departed from that plan, and immediately took over the interview by confronting Bernardo about the rapes, leaving Bellew no choice but to leave the room, stop Irwin and risk an altercation in front of Bernardo, or keep quiet and let Irwin do his thing. He chose to remain silent and take notes. I'm going to read that again. Actually, I didn't read the entire report before I did this, but this is very interesting. So let me read that again. So far as the interview itself was concerned, the plan was for Bellew to start out by questioning Bernardo about the murders and then for Irwin to question him about the rapes. Irwin apparently acted on his own agenda suddenly and without warning, departed from the plan and immediately took over the interview by confronting Bernardo about the rapes, leaving Bellew no choice but to leave the room, stop Irwin and risk an altercation in front of Bernardo, or keep quiet and let Irwin do his thing. He chose to remain silent and take notes. Very interesting. About the content of the interview itself, there is little to be said except that it began badly, degenerated into an argument, continued badly, and ended badly. Nothing of value was ever gained from the interview. Again, nothing of value was ever gained from the interview. Although the accused repeatedly tried to invoke his right to counsel, Staff Inspector Maria told the interview team to proceed in the face of repeated requests to contact counsel, assuring them that this course of action was supported by legal case law. This grossly incorrect legal advice by Staff Inspector Maria ensured that no evidence discovered as a result of the interview could be used against Bernardo. The degree of disorganization and the inability of the various police forces to cooperate, even to the basic extent of ensuring that the video camera was loaded and the audio tapes were not lost, is difficult to fathom. The degree of disorganization and the inability, to repeat that, and the inability of the various police forces to cooperate, even to the basic extent of ensuring that the video camera was loaded and the audio tapes were not lost, is difficult to fathom. So I'm just reading through here. And there is another discrepancy, yet another one. In the absence of, this is a search of the house. In the absence of any evidence to the contrary, I proceed on the assumption, although it has not been verified or proven, that the crucial 8 mm videotapes were recovered from the ceiling area above a pot light in the upstairs bathroom at 57 Bayview Drive in the manner attributed to Mr. K. Murray in public statement. That's his lawyer, Bernardo's lawyer at the time. At the time of writing, Murray is the subject of an OPP criminal investigation announced in November 1994 into his conduct in relation to the tapes. The OPP informed this review it would interfere with their investigation if we were to question any of their potential witnesses, and we have refrained from doing so. That's the people doing this review, I imagine. This part of the report is written on the assumption that public statements about Murray's removal of the tapes are accurate. It is written without the benefit of any information from Murray or those associated with him in the removal of the crucial evidence from the murder scene. The house was under police surveillance when Murray left the house on May 6th. Although the police had been criticized for letting him leave with the tapes, they had no grounds to stop and search Murray on his way out of the house. They never considered doing so. They had no reason to believe the tapes are still in the house. They had no reason to believe the tapes were still in the house when Murray went in. In any event, they had no grounds to believe that an officer of the court would remove from a murder scene real physical evidence hidden by the accused. The search produced very significant evidence and was generally a model of painstaking and detailed thoroughness. Notwithstanding this success, the critical issue hanging over the entire search is that it failed to produce the crucial videotapes of the rape and torture of Leslie Mahaffey and Christian French and the rape of Tammy Homolka. There is much to be said for the police point of view expressed by Sergeant Ballou in his paper prepared for the FBI Academy at Quantico and reproduced in Appendix 13. Now I'm going to skip forward here. The failure to find the tapes had a critical impact on the course of the prosecution because the plea bargain with Homolka would not have been made if the police had found the tapes. In considering the failure to find the tapes, one must bear in mind the information available to the police and their state of knowledge during the search. They had not yet had the opportunity to speak to Homolka about the tapes and had no evidence that the tapes were still in existence, and they had some reason to believe that the tapes were no longer in the house. The immediate cause of the failure to find the tapes, assuming they were in the Potlight area, is that Constable Kershaw did not reach far enough into the sealed attic cavity. It is now apparent with the benefit of hindsight that the advantage of knowledge unavailable to him at the time, and with the benefit of Murray's statement, assuming it is true, that he was able to reach in and find the tapes. That Constable Kershaw erred in failing to search the area more thoroughly. The less immediate but underlying impediment that restricted the scope of the search was the restricted mindset of the searchers. And I'm going to stop there. There's so many inconsistencies and questions that I have. It's to me, it's the whole thing is just mind-boggling. It just is.